Our story begins at the bottom of the Naboo reactor shaft as Maul was clinging to nothing except for pure anger and hatred to keep him alive. His vision was going in and out, and all he could see was the occasional flashback of Kenobi, cutting him in half. Maul fell forever, landing in this trash pit where he was now stranded without his legs. Everything was going dark for Maul as he lost hope for survival, but after a few days, a trash ship from Lothal Minor came and picked up the Naboo trash, including Maul, and the fallen Sith Lord forced himself to stay awake once more, despite the excruciating physical and mental anguish. And as Maul was flown across the galaxy, he was forced to relive his life with a series of flashbacks as death was seemingly trying to claim him once and for all. So, in order to stay alive, Maul embraced these flashbacks. First, he relived his childhood on Dathomir, under his mother Talzin, with his brothers Feral and Savage. Maul recalled receiving his tattoos from Talzin, and he also recalled the mysterious visits from the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. Talzin and Sidious often shared secrets of the darkness and the magics, and Maul would hide in his room as he knew that he had a power within him, a dark power, and he didn't want to be taken away. And then, Maul's flashbacks showed him Sidious eventually taking him from his family, and Sidious would put Maul through the worst training possible, full of physical and mental pain, and Maul relived all of it. The training forged Maul into a perfect weapon of the Sith, devoid of any emotion except for the dark side, just as Sidious always intended. Maul remembered all of his missions leading up to Naboo, and finally, Maul remembered his final mission that led to his defeat. Sidious sent him to Naboo alone to fight a Jedi Master worthy of being on the Council, along with his Padawan, and Maul was eventually defeated, and for as long as he could recall, Maul was just abandoned in the reactor shaft, and all he could feel was that Sidious was going to just move on without him. And as Maul was eventually dropped down into the massive trash heaps on Lothal Minor, he once again felt anger, hatred, and pure agony. But it was no longer aimed at Kenobi. No, now all of Maul's dark emotions were aimed at the man that was responsible for him having to leave his family, undergo over a decade of horrible dark side training, and ultimately send him to his death. Maul hated Darth Sidious, and he hated the dark side for taking everything from him. Maul could feel his sanity leaving him as he was alone on this awful planet, surrounded by nothing but trash without his legs, and Maul would just curse away the dark side, giving in to his fate, as he accepted that this was the end of his life. He didn't want to go on anymore if it meant continuing in this dark agony. So, Maul just let go, and as death seemed to take Maul, he was instead transported elsewhere. Maul soon would open his eyes to see blue bridges, shining stars, and he felt something he'd never truly felt before: peace. His mind was quiet, his anger was gone, and his legs had returned. Maul fell to his knees on the bridge, and for the first time in his life that he could remember, Maul smiled. It was another minute until Maul noticed someone in front of him wearing Jedi robes, and Maul quickly got to his feet, then shook his head in disbelief as he stared at Qui-Gon Jinn, the Jedi Master he killed on Naboo. Maul took a cautious step forward, his gaze locked onto Qui-Gon Jinn. The Jedi stood before him, calm as ever, presence radiating something other than Maul had ever truly felt before: serenity. There was no anger, no resentment, no desire for revenge. Despite what Maul had done to him, there was just an undeniable sense of peace. Maul muttered that this is impossible, and he glanced down at his legs, then back up at Qui-Gon again and again. He clenched his fists, expecting to feel the familiar burn of rage, but there was nothing, just quiet. And finally, Qui-Gon spoke with his quiet, balanced voice, telling Maul that nothing is impossible as long as it is the will of the Force. Maul inhaled sharply, then let out a slow breath, and he just spoke his feelings, telling Qui-Gon that he spent his entire life enslaved to the dark side, molded into a weapon, stripped of any choice, forced to be the beginning of a galactic conflict he couldn't even pretend to understand. And now, he is here. He looked at Qui-Gon with one simple question: why? Why him? And Qui-Gon took a step forward, expression thoughtful, and he told Maul that the Force is not yet done with him. He has suffered, but for the first time in his life, Maul will now be given a choice. He can be free of the chains of the Sith and live a new life. Maul said that he was told the dark side was power, that it was the only path, but instead it took everything from him. And Qui-Gon said that although the dark side is extremely seductive, it is a prison. So, Maul asked Qui-Gon to show him the way, to let him live again without the chains of the dark side holding him back any longer. Qui-Gon smiled, putting a hand on Maul's shoulder, saying he will make a great Jedi, before seemingly putting Maul to sleep. And eventually, Maul would begin to open up his eyes, finding himself back in the real galaxy, on the real world of Lothal Minor. But he was rebuilt. He didn't have his natural, organic legs any longer. Instead, they were different. They were cleanly made of metal scraps from around here, as if the Force or Qui-Gon did this to him, while his body waited for his mind to return. Maul slowly stood up, feeling out his new legs, and he ran out to a clearing to look at the stars, where his new journey would be taking him. And out across the galaxy on Coruscant, Darth Sidious was sitting in his Chancellor chair, still just basking in this new reality. It has been around a month since Sidious lost his apprentice on Naboo, and although it was a tough loss, considering the time that went into Maul's training, the dominoes couldn't have fallen better for Sidious. Dooku committed himself to the Sith by killing Yaddle, and the young Anakin Skywalker was assigned to be trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi, an inexperienced Jedi who was doing this only as a favor to his fallen master Qui-Gon. Sidious often allowed himself to imagine a future where he's become Emperor of the Galaxy, and Anakin Skywalker is by his side without any Jedi remaining to stop them. It was a beautiful vision, but as Sidious sat here today, he felt a vergence in the Force. Something had shifted, but Sidious couldn't get a feel on exactly what it was. Some sort of awakening, but he knew he would be ready. That same night, inside of the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan woke up from rustling sounds inside of his quarters. The Jedi Knight reached for his lightsaber, only to find out that he was in no danger. Anakin Skywalker had entered Obi-Wan's room, fallen asleep on the floor, and this was something that had become quite common. Anakin, after losing both his own mother and losing Qui-Gon, was essentially clinging to Obi-Wan to make sure he doesn't lose yet another mentor. Obi-Wan just sighed to himself, acknowledging that he was, indeed, getting very close to young Skywalker, and Obi-Wan tried to fall back asleep. And outside of the Jedi Temple, something was brewing. Grand Master Yoda, having felt the same disturbance that Darth Sidious felt, was out meditating by the living tree when he heard the sound of someone flipping over the wall, and metal legs clanging to the Duracrete ground. Yoda didn't move for his lightsaber though. He just called out to this person, asking who is here. The Dathomirian hesitated, unsure of what to say, before just muttering that his master used to call him Maul. Now Yoda opened his eyes and stared right into the eyes of Maul as Maul tilted his head, asking why Yoda isn't trying to kill him. Why isn't he afraid? Yoda reached his hand out, asking for help back up to his feet, and Maul helped him as they now walked outside of the temple together. It was quiet, aside from the distant sound of traffic, and soon Yoda said that if one lives long enough, they begin to see the same eyes in different people. And Yoda said that in Maul's eyes, he does not see darkness, he sees sorrow. And so the two of them would walk together for a long time, as Maul would begin to go over his experiences throughout life, and how he has now found the light side. Yoda was extremely intrigued by the idea of Qui-Gon living on, but for now, he stayed focused on Maul, telling him that many Jedi, especially the younger, more arrogant ones, will not be as easily forgiving of his actions on Naboo. Maul was a murderer, but when Yoda learned that it was Qui-Gon who saved Maul, it showed Yoda that the Force was guiding Maul down this path, and Yoda knew he must not stay in the way of the Force. Maul considered all of this, and then he told Yoda that perhaps he can show a sign of good faith. He knows who the Sith Lord is. Yoda put a hand to his chin, telling Maul that this information would certainly put him on the path to forgiveness, and perhaps, in time, on the path of becoming a Jedi. Yoda would invite Maul inside of the temple, into his personal quarters, where he would be seen by no one. And as Maul would lay down inside of Yoda's room, he nearly broke down. For all of his life, he was forced to use his powers to feel anger, hatred, all of the worst emotions. But being inside of this temple just assured Maul that there was so much more to life. His hatred of the Jedi was built on nothing but lies from Sidious, and he refused to let his dark emotions about Sidious cloud his feelings. He would not let anger or hatred get the best of him any longer. In the morning, Yoda would call a council meeting, and he would allow all of the council members to gather before making his way up there himself. And inside of the temple's main halls, Anakin Skywalker was talking with a young Jedi named Nadar Veb, as both of them were playing a pretend lightsaber fight while their masters, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Kit Fisto, talked for a bit. But as Anakin dodged a fake lightsaber strike, he looked over to Yoda's quarters as the doors opened, and he saw Maul. Anakin felt a sudden rise in anger and fear as he realized this was the man who killed Qui-Gon. And Obi-Wan saw Anakin freeze, so he turned as well, and was beyond shocked to see the man he cut down on Naboo walking over to the council elevators with Yoda. Obi-Wan instinctively grabbed his lightsaber without even realizing it as he ignited it, yelling at Yoda to watch out. Obi-Wan began running at Maul, and Yoda reached out, pulling Obi-Wan's lightsaber into his own hands to extinguish it, before telling Obi-Wan it's alright, and perhaps he and young Skywalker should come with them to the Jedi Council. Obi-Wan was in disbelief. Was he dreaming? This was the man that murdered his master, and yet he was just roaming free in the temple? Obi-Wan had to find a way to calm himself, and soon he would call Anakin over as the four of them got into the council elevator. Maul didn't speak. He didn't have the words. He was seeing firsthand just how deeply his actions affected these two young Jedi, and Maul would feel terrible. He could see Anakin trembling, face lost all of its color, and Maul recognized these signs of fear as the same ones he had growing up around Darth Sidious. Maul hated this feeling, and he promised he would make it right. So when the council doors finally swung open, all of the masters nearly jumped out of their seats as Yoda escorted Maul inside. Obi-Wan would take Yaddle's empty seat as young Anakin stood beside him, and Yoda would go over everything that he learned from Maul. Yoda would detail how Maul came to him. They talked for many hours, and Yoda learned that it was Qui-Gon who brought him back from the darkness. All of the council members listened closely, and eventually, Windu sternly asked Yoda, what if he is wrong? And Yoda said that if he is wrong about Maul, then that means the Force itself was wrong, and if that is the case, then they're all doomed anyways. And as everyone went silent, Maul finally spoke, saying he knows where the Sith Lord Darth Sidious is, or more so who he is. The council would listen as Maul revealed the truth about Darth Sidious. He is Chancellor Palpatine. And so, the entire Jedi Council would ready themselves to immediately go and find Palpatine, to end this before Palpatine can do anything truly dangerous to the galaxy. Windu felt relief, knowing that all of the awful corruption in the galaxy, in the Republic, could be tied back to the Sith, and it could all end today. Yoda looked to Maul, asking him to stay in here with Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan tried to protest, but the entire council was now gone, leaving Maul with Kenobi and Skywalker. And although Anakin was still young, he was beginning to come out of his shell a bit, and seeing the trust that Yoda put into Maul helped to calm him, along with the revelation that Qui-Gon somehow lived on in the Force. So Anakin would crack a joke, telling Maul that he can't actually believe he tried to run him over on Tatooine. Maul smiled a bit, saying he wasn't actually going to do it, but Obi-Wan bristled at this, staring out of the window as the Jedi shuttle took off across the city. Obi-Wan told Maul that if he is lying, this won't end well for him. Maul just said that he has no reason to lie. He is no longer the Sith that fought him on Naboo, and he is sorry for what happened to Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan actually felt some relief hearing this, as if the apology itself just took a weight off his shoulders, and he asked Maul if he truly did see Qui-Gon again. Maul said yes. He took a seat, and he detailed for Obi-Wan exactly what that experience was like, and how Qui-Gon helped to save him. And out across the city, the council members would arrive at the executive building, spreading out after finding that Palpatine was no longer here in his office. And after a long time searching, it was conducted that Palpatine was gone. And in the council, Obi-Wan and Anakin would hear the full story of Maul's redemption, and soon, Kenobi would answer his comlink, as Yoda and Windu were asking Maul if there was another place Palpatine could be. He wasn't here, but his personal shuttle was still here, so where could he have gone? And Maul knew immediately where Sidious was. He was in the industrial sector, where he often trained Maul in his final years before the Naboo mission. Maul said he will take them there, despite the horrible memories it could bring him. And deep in the industrial sector, Darth Sidious was indeed here, and he was not alone. After feeling the disturbance in the Force yesterday, Sidious called Dooku to this lair to discuss what this could be, and it felt like an awakening of sorts. Dooku and Sidious both wondered if this could somehow be Darth Maul, and Sidious said the dark side does give one unnatural abilities to survive the worst of situations. It could be him. And then, the Jedi ship would fire, blasting the hangar doors down as the ship flew inside. Sidious and Dooku both fell to the floor, narrowly avoiding the falling debris and the fires around them as they both scrambled to their feet, hearing the lightsabers of all of the Jedi Masters suddenly ignite. There would be no surrender on either side. The battle would erupt quickly in a storm of flashing sabers as the Jedi struck as one, but Dooku stood tall, his newly red blade carving through the air, meeting the sudden assault of Yoda, Plo, Eathcock, Adigalia, Evan Peel, and Sazy Tin. And across the hangar, Sidious unleashed a blast of lightning and saber strikes against Windu, Depa Billaba, Yarael Poof, Apparensis, and Ki-Adi-Mundi, embracing the full power of the dark side as he moved with terrifying speed. Eathcoth would fall first, his defenses crumbling under Dooku's masterful blade work, before the Sith Lord saber pierced his heart. Adigalia, attempting to cover Koth's fall, was caught by a ruthless counterstrike, crumpling to the ground as Dooku's blade burned through her as well. Evan Peel fought valiantly, dodging Dooku's relentless attacks, until a sudden force push sent him crashing into a wall, where the Sith Lord delivered a killing blow without hesitation. Meanwhile, Sidious moved like a phantom, weaving between Jedi strikes with more of his impossible speed. Yarael Poof, despite his immense wisdom, could not deflect the full force of Sidious's Sith lightning, his long frame convulsing before Sidious silenced him with a blade across the neck. Ki-Adi-Mundi fought with all of his might, parrying the Dark Lord's vicious assault, but a missed strike left him exposed, and Sidious's saber cut him down in a single, ruthless swing. Despite the quick losses, the Jedi would press on, adapting to the Sith's relentless aggression. Windu's mastery of the pod allowed him to match Sidious's ferocity, redirecting the Sith Lord's own darkness against him. Depa Billaba and Apparensis provided support, their combined efforts forcing Sidious onto the defensive. Meanwhile, Yoda led the charge against Dooku, his agility countering his former apprentice's every move. With Plo Koon and Sazy Tin pressing from both sides, Dooku found himself overwhelmed. And finally, Yoda's saber disarmed the Sith Lord, and Plo Koon did what had to be done, striking down Dooku, and the former Jedi fell dead. Sidious, now alone against the remaining Jedi, fought with desperation, his power shaking the structure around them, but against Windu's relentless strikes and Yoda's sudden speed, even the Dark Lord could not survive. Depa Billaba severed his retreat, Apparensis locked him in place with the Force, and Windu's final strike cleaved Sidious's saber in half, but the Sith Lord screamed in anger, unleashing a huge wave of lightning all around them. Every single Jedi crashed into the wall, and Sidious took off, getting into Dooku's ship, and Sidious took off out of the hangar. But he wasn't free quite yet. Maul was inside of the Jedi shuttle, and as Sidious took off, Maul felt the light of the Jedi, opening the shuttle door, and he used both hands, catching Sidious's ship as it tried to take off. Sidious looked out of the back window to see Maul, and he angrily pushed down on the accelerator. But Maul was holding steady, and finally, Maul twisted his hands to crush the engines of Dooku's ship that Sidious was in. The engine suddenly exploded, and in a final scream, Sidious was swallowed up by the exploding ship as it was sent crashing to the ground below. Maul did it. He destroyed his past, and he felt the darkness fade away. When it was over, they would all return to the Jedi Temple, and Maul would be given a choice. If he wants to try and become a Jedi, he can go on that path. Otherwise, he is free to go, but the Council could not exactly promise that they won't at least sort of be keeping an eye on him. And as Maul looked to Yoda, Windu, Plo, then back over to Obi-Wan and Anakin, the young Anakin gave a small nod, and Maul said he would like to try becoming a Jedi. Yoda said this was very good, and arrangements would be made, as Yoda would decide to step away from the Jedi Council and become Maul's Jedi Master. In his place, Plo Koon would become the Grand Master, and after a night of funerals for Eathcoth, Adigalia, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Yarael Poof, the galaxy would move on. Yoda would take Maul to the planet of Tanu, where there was a Jedi Temple during the High Republic, and under the guidance of Master Yoda, Maul's transformation from a warrior of vengeance to a Jedi of peace was slow but profound. For 5 years, he trained relentlessly, reshaping his mind, his body, his spirit. His combat prowess that was once fueled by hatred became honed through discipline and control. Meditation would replace his rage. Patience would replace his aggression. Yoda, with his infinite wisdom, would help Maul unlearn the Sith teachings, guiding him to understand the Force not as a weapon, but as the living energy that bound all things together. In time, Maul did find clarity through peace, and when he received a new crystal on Ilum, it would be yellow. In the galaxy without Palpatine, Bail Antilles of Alderaan would become Chancellor, and he would work closely with the Jedi, reshaping the galaxy and even bringing on the young Queen of Naboo as his Vice-Chancellor to someday take his place. The Jedi helped reform this, and the Republic found peace without corruption. And in his continued training, Maul would spar with his fellow Jedi who visited the Tanu Temple. Refining his technique, into a different blend of Dathomirian agility and Jedi teachings. Maul's natural instincts made him an exceptional warrior, but his real growth was seen in his restraint, choosing defense over attack when possible, and soon he forged a really strong bond with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and with each mission they shared, the past seemed to fade even more. Anakin Skywalker, still the Padawan of Obi-Wan, would also become a close friend, drawn to Maul's unorthodox style and his own perspective on the Force. On one mission they took together in the Outer Rim, the three Jedi were sent to a war-torn planet of Lokan, where rival factions threatened to tear their world apart. While Anakin and Maul tried to negotiate with the leaders, Obi-Wan worked secretly to dismantle a dangerous weapons facility supplying both sides. Diplomacy ultimately would falter, and violence erupted, and Maul would intercept an assassin blade meant for Skywalker, as they would take down the Lokan warriors together. And eventually, the trio would uncover the true master behind this conflict, a rogue arms dealer manipulating both factions for profit. And after months on this mission, they brought the fighting to an end, ensuring peace for the citizens of Lokan. Yoda was a proud master, and Maul would soon be gifted the rank of Jedi Knight. On another mission, Kenobi, Skywalker, and Maul would be together when their cruiser crashed on a remote jungle moon, leaving Skywalker, Kenobi, and Maul stranded with no communication. And while scouting the area, Obi-Wan unknowingly stumbled into a deep cave, only to find himself trapped within a nest of Gundarks. Maul and Anakin, sensing the distress through the Force, rushed to his aid. They found Kenobi dangling upside down in a tangle of vines, with the massive clawed creatures circling hungrily below. And working together, Anakin provided a distraction, while Maul leapt from ledge to ledge, cutting down vines and clearing a path for Obi-Wan to climb away safely. The two would pull their friend from the pit just in time, sharing a laugh as Obi-Wan dusted himself off, muttering something about how they better not bring this up around the other Jedi. And as the years passed, Maul's place in the Jedi Order was undeniable. He was a Jedi Knight, a protector of peace, and at last, the Jedi Council recognized his journey, gifting him a Padawan of his own as Maul found his place in this peaceful galaxy. And eventually, once he was a Jedi Master along with Anakin, Maul would once more find the ghost of Qui-Gon, and all three of Skywalker, Kenobi, and Maul would speak to their proud Jedi Master. And folks, that is our story for today. One that I got sort of recommended a while back, more like, what if Anakin saved Maul? But I wanted to just take the path of, this is different, it's what if Qui-Gon's ghost saved Maul? But I find it really interesting. Qui-Gon, after becoming a Force ghost, is able to save the one that, cut him down, destroyed him, and really wanted to just take Maul down a path of redemption with him kind of just accepting the light side in that world and coming back a completely different person. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Hope you guys did as well. Let me know what you thought down below, and I'll see you in the next video.